from people all over the community. And we just want to say thank you, first of all, for taking a little bit of your time this afternoon to talk about, we are recording, to talk about how we can support Afghanistan and the folks who have evacuated from Afghanistan, evacuate in the future. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on this call just sort of explaining the situation from our perspective here in Kentucky, here on the ground. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you can potentially be involved as the situation continues to unfold. So Maria, if you could hit the next slide, that would be great. Just we're on the call, I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Catholic Charities. The call a little bit, but most of the talking is going to be done by people who know a lot less than I do. Is the Assistant State Refugee Coordinator with the Kentucky Office for Refugees, which is housed here at Catholic. Rebecca Sim is the Program Director of the Immigration Legal Services Program here at Catholic Charities. The Program Director for Migration and Refugee Services here. And Ellen Hauber is our Director of Development. Ellen's department is responsible for collecting in-kind donations, coordinating volunteers, collecting monetary donations, all that kind of thing. And so Ellen will talk more as we move further along about how some of those logistics. Before we get started, I am going to take just a minute to try to set some terms. Maria, the next slide for me. Thanks. These are some terms that you may have seen in the media over the past couple of weeks as the situation in Afghanistan has unfolded. Not always clear what exactly these respective terms might mean. So I just want to take a couple seconds to set some understanding of what these are. So sometimes we talk about immigrants, sometimes we talk about migrants. Migrants are people who are on the move. Immigrants are people who are on the move and intending to relocate themselves in a new country. All of things you see here, all these terms, those folks are all immigrants of some kind or another. Our immigration system here in the United States makes distinctions about immigrants in all different. And one of the distinctions that is made in the system is for people who are immigrating as refugees. That we're very familiar with here at Catholic Charities. We do a lot of work in refugee resettlement, as some of you all will know. People who come to the US as refugees are pre-screened in their country of origin as potential refugees for resettlement purpose. The intention is that they're coming to the US to make a permanent home here. And we have in our legal system a number of different provisions are resettled as refugees. There are millions and millions of displaced people in the world. About 65 of them, only about 1% of the people who are displaced will be eventually resettled. So there's a huge group of displaced persons in the world who won't ever have access to the service of refugee resettlement. But the United States is one of the countries that does engage in refugee resettlement, and we've been doing it here at Catholic Charities for over 50 years. A category of people who seek entrance into the United States is asylum seekers and asylees. A lot of times the media will use the term refugees when what they really mean from a legal perspective is an asylum. I said about refugees are screened and the decision is made to admit them while they are in their country of origin. Asylum seekers are people who have come to the US under their own power, under their own steam, and have come to the US border and have presented themselves as asylum. I can't go through the classic example of asylum persecuted in a States and says, take me in, they're going to kill me if I go back. A lot of the folks who are presenting at the southern border in Mexico, those folks are often coming and seeking us. The test for asylum as a legal matter is for people who you have to meet certain specified criteria around the fear that you have a justifiable fear of persecution in your home country. So there are a number of asylum seekers here in the United States already, regardless of the Afghanistan situation, and we're going to talk more about that as the meeting goes on. So parolees and evacuees, these are the terms that are currently most accurate for the people who are leaving Afghanistan. A parolee is someone who is given permission to enter into the country. They have a parole to come into the United States. Evacuees, of course, are people who are being evacuated from another country. And the reason that this makes a difference is because services for other immigrants are not the same and often not as generous as the resettlement services that are offered to refugees. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the call. Special immigrant visa, SIV, this might be a term that you have seen in the news as well. The special immigrant visa program is the United States has been operating in the past 20 years or so for folks in Afghanistan and in Iraq who have been of service to the US government, whether that's the military or some other aspect of the US presence in those countries, people who are interpreters, people who are working with the political entity, but people who have been of service to the US who are entitled to the potentially opened the door for them to be in danger if they stay in the country. A number of the people who have been evacuated from Afghanistan are SIV holders, or at least were in the process of being considered for SIV status in the months and years leading up to the departure from Afghanistan. Priority 2 visa holders, sort of a lower step in priority from those special immigrant visas, but it's a similar type of status that's being accorded to folks who are leaving or trying to leave Afghanistan. So with all of that as a little bit of background, I am going to turn over now to Maria Kerner, who is, as I said at the beginning, the Assistant State Refugee Coordinator in Kentucky, to talk to you all a little bit about how refugee resettlement programs used to consider services to be provided to people who are currently in the US or have come to the US as a result of the evacuation from Afghanistan. So Maria.
All right, thank you, Lisa. And I know the sound hasn't been great. I apologize for that. We are a nonprofit, so the Wi-Fi here and with some amount of people, I think Lisa was going in and out, but hopefully you mostly heard what she said. So as Lisa said, I'm Maria Kerner, the Assistant Director of the Kentucky Office for Refugees Department, and we serve as the federally designated State Refugee Coordinator's Office for Kentucky. Every state that participates in the Refugee Resettlement Program has a designated office like this, a State Refugee Coordinator's Office. In several states, this role would be in the state government. In some states, the state government opted to withdraw from managing the program for different reasons. So in Kentucky, this office is within Catholic Charities of Louisville. So we oversee and coordinate post-refugee resettlement services. We manage funding from the Federal Office of Refugee Resettlement that funds things like case management, employment services, English language classes, and a variety of other social services, cultural orientation, emotional wellness support, temporary cash assistance programs, that kind of thing. And one reason I'm mentioning this context is So people that are determined eligible, have an eligible immigration status through the Office of Refugee Resettlement, or ORR, have this menu of services and benefits available to them. And they can, the cash assistance is temporary, it lasts a maximum of 8 months. But the other services like case management and employment and English language help can go on up to 5 years after they arrive. So there are 5 refugee resettlement agencies in Kentucky that participate in this program. And we have communication with all of them. We provide funding to them and help coordinate services. So there are 2 agencies in Louisville. Catholic Charities is one of them. The Migration Refugee Services Department does the direct resettlement, and Kentucky Refugee Ministries, or KRM, is the other one. KRM has a sub-office in Lexington. And then the other agency is the International Center, and they have a main office in Bowling Green and a sub-office in Owensboro. And so my office, the State Refugee Coordinator's Office, we also have, since the situation in Afghanistan has been unfolding, they started weekly calls starting August 20th, 2 weeks ago. So I want to say, before I go on and say anything more, the situation is very fluid. We're very thankful that all these people wanted to be on this call to learn more and how to help. We're still figuring things out. This was an emergency situation. So I've been on 2 calls so far with federal officials from the Office of Refugee Resettlement and from the Department of State, PRM, acronyms, Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. So they're the kind of the 2 federal partners over this process. And things change. We're getting new information. I have another call tomorrow, so it could be different tomorrow. It's, as I said, a very fluid situation. So I wanted to say that before I went on to the next slide. All right, so you might have seen this has been out in the media. These were statements we sent, but the State Department has created a new program called the Afghan Parolee Support Program, or APS. So last week, each refugee resettlement agency in Kentucky and all the refugee resettlement agencies across the nation were figuring out what is their capacity to potentially assist Afghan parolees. And they gave numbers to their national refugee resettlement agency. So these numbers we're sharing are just proposed. We do not know how many will actually come, if these numbers will be reached, but this was the communication of this is how many we think our state could handle. So you can see these on the slide. Louisville up to 350 between both agencies, Lexington up to 125, Bowling Green up to 200, and Owensboro up to 100. The timetable for this is uncertain. We do not know yet when they arrive. So the people that were evacuated in an emergency situation from Afghanistan are currently being processed in U.S. Army bases across the country, and we do not know yet when they will start to leave those bases and come to places across the United States. It could be in the coming days, in the coming weeks. I know there was some media interviews coming out of Bowling Green that made it sound like, oh, they might be here tomorrow. And I think he said that because we don't know, but no one has arrived yet to our knowledge. So we're waiting. So this is the capacity, and we'll see what happens. So the other big uncertainty right now is what benefits will this population be eligible for? So as Lisa explained, there's all those different statuses and different categories. Right now, because of this emergency situation, they're giving the evacuees humanitarian parole. Currently, this is not a status that would be eligible for all those benefits and services I described available through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So the State Department is setting up a temporary benefit program that will be operated by the resettlement agencies like Catholic Charities or KRM or the International Center, which would provide very initial services to this Afghan parolee population for up to 90 days. But as of now, they would not be eligible for that continued assistance through the programs managed with ORR funding, and they would not be eligible for federal benefits such as Medicaid, SNAP, KTAP, or TANF. And again, this is all fluid. This is what it is right now. They are trying to address this on the federal level to figure out if there's a way this population could be eligible for more benefits. So I think, I was going to say I'm going to stop now, but I added a slide right before this to address some questions I saw coming in before we started this. I think a common question we're getting is how many Afghan refugees or SIVs are already in Kentucky. So we have a database that shows all the arrivals that come to Kentucky. So the numbers you see here are people from Afghanistan that were directly resettled in Kentucky by a refugee resettlement agency. And you can see overall it's not that large of a number. Since 2016, there have been a total of 215 Afghan refugees or Afghan SIVs resettled in Kentucky by an agency in Louisville, Lexington, or Bowling Green. There's not a large existing Afghan community here. There surely are more people from Afghan background that live in Kentucky. This is just the statuses that we know about. If they came as another immigration pathway as a student, if they moved here because they had family here, then there's probably more, but that's just the number that have been directly assisted by a refugee resettlement agency in Kentucky since 2016. I think that's the end of my part. So I think, is it Colin who's going to talk next?
Up next. So thank you, Maria, for explaining how that works and for raising this point about the legal status of the folks who are coming from Afghanistan. I know it doesn't seem a very, and so Rebecca Sim, who is the director of our Immigration Legal Services program, is going to talk a little bit about what that means for people who are currently in the country having been evacuated from Afghanistan, and also about people who may still be in Afghanistan. Rebecca?
Hey, thank you, Lisa. Immigration has been a very hot topic for as long as I can remember. If I think about it, I don't know that I can really well recall a time when there wasn't something in the news related to immigration. So what I'm tasked with discussing today is how those Afghan people in the United States might be able to help bring their family members from Afghanistan, and then how we might be able to assist the evacuees who will be arriving here to the state of Kentucky. So as Maria alluded to, there may not actually be that many people here in the United States who will be eligible to file petitions to bring family from overseas. Generally, family-based immigration works in that U.S. citizens or permanent residents are able to file petitions for spouses, children, parents, and siblings. In some cases, that immigration process works fairly quickly. And by that, I mean maybe within a year to a year and a half, because it is a multi-step process. And in other cases, it may take 10 to 15 years or longer. As this crisis unfolds, the US government has indicated that it might be willing to entertain requests for expedited processing, which is generally an extraordinary remedy available only in the most dire of situations. So hopefully this situation would qualify for that. Expedited processing just means that your particular case could be selected to be processed ahead of other people's cases. It might not mean that you can jump ahead in the line and get a green card before other people who filed before you. It just might mean that you might be able to get a final decision on the first or second part of your case, and then maybe have another remedy available. So I know that perhaps in the media or in groups where you've been discussing this, the term humanitarian parole, which is a little bit different than parolees, the people who have been evacuated and are already on their way here. Humanitarian parole is normally used by someone who is in the United States who is filing a request for someone to be allowed entry into the United States for a specific period of time, either to pursue a green card application or to receive medical treatment or whatever that case may be. You don't have to have someone who is a family member file that petition for you, but generally those types of cases would have the highest probability of success. Again, humanitarian parole is something very sparingly granted in the past. So we are not sure yet whether it will be granted across the board or if it will continue to be something that is a very rare form of relief. And again, as we've been just talking about, as we understand, up to 50,000 Afghans may be arriving across the nation and will be arriving with a status called parole. That is a temporary status that will allow them employment authorization and permit them to remain in the United States with legal status for a period of what we believe to be 2 years. I think that's the latest information we have on that. But it does not provide a direct path to permanent residence or US citizenship. It's just a temporary means to be legally in the United States. So for those parolees who do not have a family member here who might be able to help them start their path towards a green card, the only potential option would be to request asylum. And asylum is something that has been a very hot topic, probably the most well-known topic in immigration law of late. And it's pretty clear from the coverage and what's going on at the border that our asylum system does not work well. It's been in need of reform for quite some time, but it's glaringly evident now that something must be done to fix that system. I think at last count, the current asylum backlog is over 1 million applications. So more than 1 million people, plus potentially their family members who are included on those applications, have been waiting for a decision on whether they will be granted protection in the United States and will be able to remain here. If we add to that potentially another 50,000 applications, it will, in reality, I think, slow the system to a halt because there are not sufficient asylum officers within the Department of Homeland Security or immigration judges within the Department of Justice to be able to timely adjudicate and make final decisions on those applications. So I believe there is in preparation to be introduced soon a bill in Congress to provide a more direct path towards a permanent status for Afghan evacuees. This has been done in the past. There was a Lautenberg parole amendment as well as the Indo-Chinese parole adjustment program used in very similar situations to this for people who were either denied refugee status or evacuated, somehow brought to the United States by the government and then given a means to apply for permanent residence after a certain period of time here in the United States, usually 1 year. And with that parole adjustment application, they would again undergo vetting and background checks and have to establish that they meet all eligibility for a permanent status in the United States. And most immigration attorneys and those involved in the refugee resettlement community, I think would agree that this is probably the best situation, the best fix for the situation. So we would like to encourage you all to contact your representatives and senators and urge them to either support, introduce legislation or consider drafting and introducing legislation themselves. Lisa,
Thanks,
if I
Rebecca.
missed something, let me know, but I believe I've covered it.
Thank you, Rebecca. As Maria said, this situation is very fluid and constantly changing. At this time, we don't believe that there is a pending bill for folks to get behind, but we'll be keeping you all updated because this is really important. Rebecca mentioned the significant backlog already in the asylum system. Here in Kentucky, there just are not very many immigration lawyers, and we really do not have the capacity to assist 500 plus people to file asylum papers. An asylum application is very fact intensive. It's very specific. I don't think that the immigration bar in the US as a whole has the capacity to do this for 50,000 people. So it is really important. We hope that there will be cooperation and movement at the federal level. We may need your support both in contacting your legislatures and potentially in financial support for the legal aid process. A lot of these people who are leaving Afghanistan have nothing with them. And our purpose in our Immigration Legal Services program is to provide legal services for people who cannot otherwise afford them. But this will be a lot to take on. So next, I'm going to turn this over to Colin Triplett, the Director of Migration and Refugee Services. He's going to explain a little bit about what we do for refugees. That's even people who come in with the federal support that Maria talked about. And then by extension, what we can do for the Afghan community as people are coming in, whether or not we get that federal support, if we have enough community support, what we are able to do and would like to be able to do. Someone has asked a question, will we be sharing a summary of the meeting? Yes, we'll be doing all kinds of follow-up for you all as we go forward. Ellen will talk about that at the end of the meeting. So Colin, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Thank you all. I really do appreciate all of your all's interest in how you can help meet the need that we're seeing with our Afghan evacuees. Yes, so, I'm going to give a quick overview of what we do with refugee resettlement. Of course, when refugees arrive, we have quite a bit of notice before a refugee arrives, sometimes weeks, even a month we have notice. So of course we secure housing for them. We receive a number of donations from the community, furniture and household goods for the community, and we use those donations to set up that housing. We pick the clients up from the apartment, put food in that apartment, have a ready to eat meal when they come, and take them to their new home. Of course, we provide like a short orientation upon arrival, and then with our refugee clients, they go through a quarantine. I'll talk about the Afghan arrivals, what I know about how that process will go in a second, but we'll talk about the refugee process. And then those clients go through an orientation process. They're oriented on the community, oriented on the benefits that they will receive, oriented on what their life is going to look like. We enroll the children in public school, and the adults register with our English language school. Of course, we provide medical case management. All of our refugees go through refugee health screening, and we help them find a job. So really the effort that we undergo with our refugee clients is that path to self-sufficiency. So that's kind of a very quick overview of what we do with our refugee clients. Now, as we understand it, and as Lisa's mentioned, and Maria has also mentioned, and Rebecca, that the Afghans that we will be serving will be coming under a different designation. Now, they will receive those initial services, initial core resettlement services, finding a house, registering for school, but they will not be qualifying for those kind of extended services, right? So employment services, English language services, what have you. So that's really where you as the community can really come in to help support this effort. Of course, we will be providing kind of that core immediate service upon arrival, but those extra services that we typically provide, and we do utilize the volunteer community to help, but we really are looking towards that. So I'll start off with housing. As you can imagine, in Louisville, housing is not readily available. Of course, it is more available here in Louisville and more affordable in Louisville than in many other places. That's why we have a strong refugee resettlement program, and that's why we offer to take the number of Afghan evacuees doing kind of being part of our larger network. But any housing that you may have access to, we would love to hear about. I'll put a plug in there. I know somebody already put in the chat at the website, cclu.org, Afghanistan, which you registered for this Zoom call. Still, that will be stay live. We will get back to you if you have anything to offer. So I would really encourage anyone to visit that. So as far as housing, of course, we would love to have, individualized living spaces for the Afghans that will be coming. Of course, if it has a separate entrance and has a separate living space and a separate kitchen and bathrooms and everything, we would like that. Optimal are like kind of more apartment or houses that we can house. As far as the size of the families, we really don't have any indication if we're looking for, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom or houses. But we're always looking for larger spaces for people to live. As far as locale, of course, Jefferson County is ideal. I'll say that because it's closer to a lot of the services and to where we're located. However, if you do have, a place that you think would be suitable for a family, please reach out because we're really thinking a little bit more outside of the box of what we've done with our refugee arrivals. We will, under the current iteration, as we understand, there will be some funding that we can use to help pay some rents and utilities, but that is a very, very limited amount of money. So I would say that if there's any donation or a discount on rent or anything like that, that would, of course, go a very long way. Employment, the people that are coming as evacuees will apply for an employment authorization document and a social security card upon arrival to the base. The question was asked about quarantining. They will go through the quarantining and testing, medical screening testing while they are being processed on military bases. So I expect that when people arrive, they will no longer need to quarantine. So they will be work authorized, but as I mentioned, under the current iteration, we'll have a very limited capacity and the amount of employment help we will be able to provide. So really, if you do have some job openings, especially if they are competitive wages to other industries that our refugee clients enter, such as warehousing jobs or any other manufacturing type jobs, definitely would like to hear about that. And once again, go to that website and let us know. Material needs, of course, that's really, really important. As I said, we will be setting up housing, so material donations are always appreciated. Furniture in particular, things that you would need of course, people are not coming with anything. So anything that you would need to set up a new house. A lot of the times there are items that we don't get a lot of, like kitchen tables, trash cans, shower curtains, things like that are often not donated. Those are the things we are in the biggest need of. Of course, things we wouldn't accept are like sleeper couches. Those are heavy, and we don't accept beds. We try to give a new bed to everybody that arrives. It's just a thing that we really like to provide. Clothing, right now, we're not in need of clothing. If you have reached out to other charities that accept donations, they may not be accepting clothing at the moment. We may make exceptions for like winter clothing, coats, things like that, but for the most part, we're really looking for that kind of thing. If you are interested in donating, please go to that website. I'll keep saying it each time. English language support. I really see a large need for some long-term volunteering around providing some sort of English language support, maybe one-on-one, English language conversation or mentoring, or maybe coming to our classrooms and helping us lead a class for some of the clients. So please volunteer through that. Transportation, of course, going to appointments, medical appointments, employment appointments, job applications, those kind of things. That's a really great way for you to have a meaningful interaction with a client. No language ability is needed to take somebody from point A to point B. So it's really oftentimes a very rewarding way to get involved and to meet some of the people that are being helped. A larger way for you as a group or a civic or a parish group that could be involved is definitely through our family sponsorship program. That's really, kind of sponsoring one family and going through the entire process from setting up the apartment to airport pickup to that transportation piece and like kind of the English language and mentoring piece. So the way that we're envisioning doing that and with this group is to really have some conversations with groups that are interested, go through a training process, and then having a tiered involvement. If you just have a group that just wants to find all the furnishings for a house, the housing, the food, that's a way to be involved. If you want to do the whole thing, we can scale that up as well. So we're really excited to engage with groups of people that have the capacity to go through the family sponsorship. And of course, financial donations. As I said, there isn't the funding there to support a lot of those services that we do so well. Those case management services, medical case management, employment, English language services, youth services, all of those things that a newly arrived person would really need to get acclimated to their new community. We are always happy to receive financial donations. Also, as I mentioned about the limited nature of any kind of direct assistance that they will have, they won't, that when you're paying rent, that kind of goes away pretty quickly. So we can also use some of any financial donations to assist with rent. So please go to that website. And please stay engaged. As we've said, we'll send out a recording for this, but and I know that I've heard, I really do appreciate the outpouring of support from the community. Right now we're really trying to assess the situation, when people will arrive, how to get that set up. So I do appreciate your all's patience. We will get back to you. I do promise. It's just maybe it take a little bit of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. I'm going to turn it over to Ellen. We've gotten lots of questions in the chat around specifics on assistance. Answer the questions that we can now, but we're also going to continue to communicate with you all. The cclu.org/Afghanistan website, which is where you registered for this. There's some questions about community contact and collaboration. Someone asked about the Afghan community, the Islamic Center. Colin, do you want to just speak briefly to how we engage with ethnic communities in the course of the work that we do?
Yeah, constant communication with some leaders in the Afghan community. This is one thing, I'm glad that you brought that up. That's one thing that's really great, eye-opening about this situation. The Afghan community has been extremely vocal, reaching out to me, constant communication about how they can help. The people that will be arriving may not have family here. So knowing that the Afghan community here in Louisville, estimate about 80 families here in Louisville, really ready to help and help those people. I mentioned about the Islamic Center. We haven't reached out particularly on this in particular. I have had a conversation with a coworker who had been reaching out. So any community connections that you feel like we may not have, I would be glad to do that. We are working, closely, of course, with KRM and other providers here, and we've talked to the community, consulted with our community partners that represent, public safety, health, benefits, all government. We have done that consultation, but any connections, please. I'll put you all, I would just say, go to that website. We can, even if it's a comment about, oh, I know this connection, I think that they'd be happy to help. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Colin. Ellen, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We have been, as you can imagine, inundated with calls from the community partners and people who want to help. And we cannot thank you guys enough for everything that you all are offering to do, spending your time with us today. There is so many things that Colin mentioned, and we have a lot that these people are working day to day, minute by minute, trying to figure out what it is. And we know you all are ready to go. We are not in the position where we are ready to go. And that's why, as Colin has been telling you about the website, any contact, anything you have, if you're ready to volunteer, get on our list. If you're ready to do a donation drive, get on our list. Financial assistance, as Rebecca said, we have no idea how we're going to handle all these legal cases coming through. We're not sure how we're going to handle housing at this time. So financial donations are always important. So what we'll have is through the website, you'll have the opportunity to volunteer. There are multiple ways that you're going to be able to volunteer. The family sponsorship program, to be honest, we just started reinventing this summer. So we are working on what that looks like, scrambling to make sure it is good. Think about if you were to come to a new place and there was a big surprise party and you were just overwhelmed. We don't want to overwhelm families. We want to make sure they're getting their basic needs met in a very organized way. So by you all putting your information there, if you're into volunteering, every volunteer opportunity you have, we will engage with you. If we have that updated list, I know someone had asked about where is the list? We're working on putting that together. Please know we also have regular refugees that we are also resettling that still need your help as well. So this is not, we're just not taking Afghans. We are still taking other refugees along the way. So there is a big need in what we will have. If you are in a family sponsorship, you will get a direct list of what that family actually needs. If you want to be a piece of it, you will get a piece of what it needs. When it comes to volunteering, depending on what your interaction with a family will be the training that you will need to go through. So there are multiple, if you're just donating something, you will be fine. But if you're going to have any interaction with any of the individuals or families, we want to make sure that everyone has gone through the process of safe environment training. They have been trained through our MRS department about cultural sensitivity. There is a lot that we will do with you prior to actually engaging with a family. As far as transportation, that's an easy thing. Colin talked about it. We'll have to show us your insurance and we'll make sure your background check is taken, but there's gonna be a lot of opportunities for you to help. I know that you guys are just the tip of the iceberg. You are going back to your communities. We have corporate partners, parish partners, church partners, businesses, everybody that wants to come together as a group. So we hope you will go back to your families or communities and really say, go to the website, sign up so we can get you the information as quick as we can. We are getting, like I said, inundated with stuff, but we want to make everything as accessible to you as possible as we can. Is there anything I may have missed from this team?
I don't think so. You want to hit the next slide. Going to round up on our takeaways. So a couple of questions that have not been fielded in the chat. Someone just asked if KRM accepts crypto donations. That would be a good question for Kentucky Refugee Ministries. I don't know what kind of donations they accept. With regard to the services that we offer at Catholic Charities, someone asked a question about unaccompanied minors needing foster families. The first thing I'll say is we don't.
Lisa, we lost you.
I can step in. Hopefully it may cross over. So we here in Louisville don't have an unaccompanied minor program. I did put into the chat a website through USCCB that does do unaccompanied.
Country has
She's
posted
saying
a
the same
website.
thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
There are other refugee resettlement programs around the country that operate essentially like a foster care system.
Yeah, Lisa cut out again.
Called upon in that regard. Someone has asked the question about what services can we provide to the Afghan refugees, and how is this different than other individuals that the organization supports? The big answer to that is we don't yet know. It will largely depend on the legal status that these folks receive. After that, when we talk about their legal status, that dictates what sort of funded programs we can do. When I say funded, I mean funded by the government. We can continue to provide any of those services with private donations if we have the community support to do it. Question of what can we do for these folks is large. So the slide now, where do we go from here? First, refer Afghan families to us. If you are aware of people in the community who are anxious about their family overseas and trying to figure out how they can be of assistance, you can send those folks to Rebecca and her team in Immigration Legal Services. There was another question in the chat about interpretation services. Please, if you or someone you know speaks Dari or Pashto, please contact our language services program. They are actively recruiting in the community, beef up our stable of interpreters who speak those languages. There's a question about whether children are automatically enrolled in JCPS. They're not automatically enrolled in JCPS, but we do that for them. So that is the typical process, and we expect we will be doing that with any children who are resettling here as well. Contact your legislators, please. As we've talked about, it's incredibly important that the legal status for the folks who are coming from Afghanistan be addressed at the federal level. Please visit the site. Stay tuned for more information from us about family sponsorship. Someone has asked how much financial support is involved. Really, it doesn't necessarily have to be financial support at all. If you have time, but not money, and you are available to help set up an apartment with donations that other people have made, if you're available to drive people to doctor's appointments or employment interviews, that would be wonderful. It can be done on sort of a puzzle piece basis. The piece that you can contribute is going to be valuable, whether that's a financial piece or otherwise. So as we say at the end of the slide here, think about what you can offer. Think about what you can do. If you are interested in family sponsorship, Lauren Goldenar, who's just chimed in on the chat, is our brand new employee. God bless her. She started yesterday. And she is responsible for our family sponsorship program, and she will be very excited to hear from you. So someone has a specific question about transportation. I don't think we have any specific limits at this time around what kind of vehicle needs to be used. Obviously, that's going to depend on the families who we're serving. So I think we've addressed most of the questions that are asked. Yes, if you signed up for this Zoom, you're already on our email list, and you will continue to hear more from us on this subject. If for some reason you have not yet, please go to the website. Put your name on the list there. If there are specific things that you're already aware of that you would like to do, please fill out the form there and let us know. We will get back to you as soon as we know more specific around what we need. Thank you all for your time today. We so appreciate your willingness to be involved. We so appreciate your compassion and your dedication to serve our community in this way. Thank you very much. If you have specific follow up with you individually after the presentation. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day. God bless.
Hi, I had a quick question if you're still there and able to hear me.
Sure. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. You were speaking about the legal challenges. I was wondering what legal assistance you currently have if there's an attorney on staff. Only because, you know, I went to the University of Louisville, Brandeis, and they have a lot of clinics where law students